Hi again. It's me, Sherry, and I'm doing a little, very, very short video on what are the odds. Uh, Yesterday, I had talked about my hacker name, Fyodor Idiovsky, or Fyodor Idiovsky, as I say, and at the same time, I did not verbally say that I was looking for a certain technical book, but I was thinking about it quite a bit. So this episode is of my vlog is called What Are the Odds? So today I had returned to me books that I didn't realize I had loaned out. The first one here is Fyodor Dostoevsky, and it's called Crime and Punishment. It's an extremely good book. I would recommend reading it to everyone because it talks about illness, about physical illness, and I have an aunt who lives in Little Rock who did her thesis on a Susan Sontag book. I'm pretty sure that I'm making the right reference, but she did her thesis on what's called illness as a metaphor, and she talked about HIV/AIDS as a metaphor in society. And some of you may have read the book. I'm actually going to double check to make sure that I'm giving you the correct information about about the author of the book. So let me check. Illness as a metaphor, and let's think. I really want people to open their minds and think what illnesses could be a metaphor in this day. As we have now, here it is, illness and AIDS and its metaphors. And it is indeed written by Susan Sontag. So that's what I'm saying is, at this time, the antagonist of the book, or protagonist, the character who becomes obsessed with a pawn shop woman who buys and sells items and has some money in her under her floor or something like that. I don't want to give a spoiler, but I would highly recommend that you read this book, Crime and Punishment, which is just very, I think, coincidental, but not it. I think it's not coincidental that this book was returned to me. However, I had not loaned it to anyone, but it was returned to me just the day after that I had said that my hacker name was Fyodor Idiovsky. And I actually made that name up in like 2 seconds, because when I first started Facebook, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give all my personal information out. Well, I kind of wish that I would have just stayed, with my hacker name, Fyodor Idiovsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky also wrote a book called The Idiot, which is, I read it and I was like, oh, wow, okay. So anyway, so this book was returned to me. Dostoevsky, who is one of my favorite authors. Let's put this one aside now. And then the other book, I did not verbally mention that I was missing on a vlog or even out loud anywhere. And this is the basics when it comes to tier 1 or 2 or 3 tech support, because that's a lot of people will. Then this is the truth. They're like, Sherry, how do you remain so calm when, and trust me, I'm a lot more calm than it may seem on some of the vlogs, considering the types of computer issues that I'm dealing with. And so it's called A Guide to Customer User Support for Help Desk and Support Specialists by Fred. I think it's called Bice, Fred, Beisse. It's the 5th edition, and it comes with a CD. It's a textbook from school. At the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith. So I got this, and it's actually very well. I open it up. Okay, I just randomly open up, and it's called Job Stress in Help Desk Work. This is a big problem because a lot of people will come to someone who's doing tech support and say, they'll try to tell you what the problem is. It's always really difficult to guide them into actually telling you what the actual problem is. You'll hear a lot of my computer froze or it broke or whatever. Well, there are it's a just there it's a like a tick 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 off of the different things that could have gone wrong. And so it's really frustrating because then you set them up with a way to keep the computer hygiene going with their computer, and then 2 3 months later they're calling back, and then we have what's called hold on a second, job stress in help desk work. And some people that do help desk work make a lot of money. Okay, there are certain different kinds. Oops, I've got a Microsoft account problem, which just means I need to sign in. So anyway, I just was saying this is like a kind of a statistical, what are the odds of me receiving my help desk book back, and the Dostoevsky book, one of my favorite authors, of course. And I think right now, in this day and age, one of the most helpful pieces of literature or novel that a person could read isn't necessarily Crime and Punishment. That's not bad, but I would recommend reading the Brothers Karamazov, because it is said that that book basically contains the entirety of human nature, and I would have to agree. You'll find yourself in at least one of the characters. It is just an amazing book. I think Dostoevsky is probably my favorite author. However, I do tend to favor authors. I'm going to put these so you can see the spines of the book. My favorite authors are the authors that wrote between World War I and World War II. There was so much creativity. A lot of expatriates had moved to Europe and just really, taken off. I mean, it was just an incredible time, and I had the an amazing um, an amazing thing happen. I used to uh, be a nanny for a very well-known author. I'm not going to mention any names because a lot of times there's a lot of people in this, just really, really nearby here in my area where I live that just flip out if they hear the name of someone who has either accomplished something in their life productively or met someone, even just met someone who accomplished something in their life. And I would say that you could classify almost anyone who has just tried, you know, even if you failed or didn't think you did a great job or an awesome job, that you tried, to do something uh, with your life and to somehow help, humanity overall. So I'm not going to mention the person that I was working for as a nanny, but in that capacity of being what we called on the East Coast, the help. And I think they have a different name for that on the West Coast. I think they find the help on the West Coast to be offensive, but I don't mind. I was always the help, meaning in the background. And that's actually where I'm comfortable being, because I grew up in a home where I lived with someone. I grew up with someone who was actually extremely, and it was extremely famous. And it was kind of niche, but kind of not, kind of niche, so to speak, but kind of not. I mean, I meet people on randomly. I meet people on social networking who somehow have a connection to me just through my own dad. An example would be a really dear friend of mine, Stan the Man in California. Well, we knew each other for like 6 months. And then all of a sudden we realized that Stan's brother and my dad had worked together. And that was just a random guy living in LA. He knows a lot of people, and I know a lot of people, but it was a really weird kind of intersection. So I asked my dad, do you remember such and such? And he said, well, yeah, of course I do. So, I mean, we knew each other for 6 months before I realized, I mean, and it was a really tight connection. because my friend Stan had worked in foreign missions, and there was a big split in this denomination where I guess the home missions, and I'm talking about church planting, church building, felt that to offer humanitarian aid without shoving, just, ramming with like the foie gras, ramrod of evangelical uh, proselytization, they felt that that should accompany the humanitarian work. So they had a split with the Home Mission Board. I'm not going to mention the denomination, the Home Mission Board and the Foreign Mission Board, and they split off because the people who were actually out in the field with people who were in need in primary countries didn't want to use the foie gras method of proselytization while offering humanitarian aid. So they kind of just, the Home Missions kind of, just chopped them off, and now the whole denomination appears to be crumbling after that. They developed such a bad name that they had to change. I'm not going to say the name of the original. They had to change their whole publishing company to something called Lifeway, which to me is, I would think of it as a virus, a computer virus. I have actually driven by a Lifeway store with a big billboard that was rooted. It was one of those blinking billboards. It was literally rooted at the command prompt on a billboard. You could see the operating system on the billboard. That's really scary for a company as big as Lifeway to have a rooted billboard in the middle of Little Rock at a command prompt. Now, what the heck is that? I've never seen anyone be that careless, that careless with technology. And it really did upset me. I'm like, okay, we just drove by a billboard, one of those, a kind of a complicated LED or whatever. I don't know much about electronic billboards that was rooted, and it looked like a blank, it looked like a command line, and it was rooted. And so I think Lifeway had, they already had such a bad name with their previous name that they had to change their name to Lifeway. And what they were doing was they were taking a company that somebody I know and am related to created a demographics. You might call it a metrics. It was a kind of a data science type of thing, working at a marketing type of thing. And it wasn't bad. I'm not saying it was bad. I mean, they didn't do bad things. However, some bad things have happened in conjunction. But before they claim every bad thing that ever happened in the world, I'm going to say this: every company is vulnerable to having something catastrophic happen with their IT department. It's how you respond to it that really makes a difference. Do you get damage control right away with different various damage control companies that can help, just with the basic this, or do you just start covering things up, and just, okay, let's just say there's a problem, and instead of just addressing the problem right when it begins, you start covering and covering and covering things up until all of a sudden you just have nothing but a box of lies. So that's a tech support story. And if someone, I didn't mention a name or a denomination, if someone takes this personally, that's on them, that they have to own that, because I want to stress, banks have it, even charitable organizations have it. So that's where I'm going to end this one, because the next little vlog I'm going to do doesn't have anything to do with that I know of. And that's about, it's going to be about USB plugs. So that's how I'm just doing a shift and a pivot, because I couldn't give a crap about, whatever I just talked about. That was just that one vlog topic. And then I'm going to move on. Okay. I discussed this topic I'm not mad and I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just going to move on to a different topic. And I think that's a lot, really has a lot with to how the way people can think and process and cope with life is if you have a mishap, you know, move on and don't get caught up on that one mishap because this really this train of crap, I mean, well, it just goes and goes on a infinite loop, and it does become of a loop of disaster. Uh, okay, out.